Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Minister of Fisheries and Aquaculture webinar series. This is the first in a series of 3, and today we will be having an update to industry from our department. My name is Karen Densmore. I'm the Internal Communications and Engagement Lead with the department. Before beginning today, I would like to recognize the land we live and work on. This land acknowledgement and recognition statement helps us to remember and understand the long-standing histories and legacies of colonization that have directly impacted the communities we serve. It also allows us to express our intent to create spaces that are welcoming and inclusive, where everyone belongs, working towards truth, reconciliation, and equity. We are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, and Passamaquoddy peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1725. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but established the rules for what was to be ongoing relationship between nations. We all have responsibilities as treaty people to continue the path and reconciliation, a path of reconciliation with dignity and respect. February is also African Heritage Month, and we would like to recognize that Nova Scotia is home to over 50 African Nova Scotian communities whose culture, heritage, and histories have been and remain a key part of the province for more than 400 years. So welcome again, and we are on the Zoom platform this afternoon. So I just have a few Zoom logistics to help share with you. If you haven't been on Zoom before, all participants will have their audio and video turned off during the webinar. If you would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. So you should see it along your tool line there. It comes up, and you can just click on that and you can type in your question. The Q&A will be monitored throughout the session, but we'll address it at the end. So we'll do all the questions at the end after the presentations. So please send those along to us. If you have a question after presentation, just pop it in, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Since we have 4 presenters and our minister joining us today, please, if you can, note who your question is for, and then that will allow us to answer it as quickly as possible. So today, our lineup is, I'm just quickly going to go over our lineup of what you can expect today with our presentations. We have Sean McDonald, Director of Sustainability and Environmental Advisory Services, and he will provide an overview of the climate change and energy efficiency strategy. We also have Brennan Gorham, Director of the Nova Scotia Fisheries and Aquaculture Loan Board. He will share some information with us about products and services available through the Nova Scotia Fisheries and Aquaculture Loan Board. And then we'll have Christine Yang, Manager of Market Development. She will shed some light on recent and future marketing activities for both domestic and international markets. And last but not least, Emily Surratt, Fisheries Strategist, and she will provide an overview of the marine education materials that have been created for elementary students. Very interesting piece that Emily has to share with you. So, with no further ado, I would like to invite our minister. I'd like to just give you a brief introduction to him if you haven't met him yet. Minister Smith was first elected in 2021 as the MLA for the Eastern Shore. He became Minister of Fisheries and Aquaculture in 2023 and quickly learned about our industry and the issues and opportunities facing our stakeholders. He has started touring the province since becoming minister, meeting with stakeholders and industry over the last several months. And if you haven't met him yet, you will soon. He's getting out there. Prior to entering politics, Minister Smith was a longtime entrepreneur and spent 14 years in a family-owned waste management business and real estate. He is an active community volunteer lives in Porters Lake with his partner Kelly and their collective 3 children and 3 dogs. And we've gotten to know him a little bit over the last few months. And so welcome, Minister, to your first webinar series.
Thank you very much, Karen. Appreciate the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to host you all virtually today and be here with the industry members from across the province. Early February is a busy time of year for many, and only made busier with the mountains of snow that hit much of the province over the weekend, and of course the regular busyness that we have in our lobster fishing industry, which is well underway in LFAs 33 and 34. I appreciate the time you've made to join us here today and be part of this webinar, which is, of course, my first as a minister. Also joining us today, we have Deputy Minister Jason Hollett and several of the talented and knowledgeable members from the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture team. And they're ready and standing by to share updates on some of the program's initiatives that Karen already mentioned in the opening. As you may be aware, this is the first in a series of webinars that we're planning as a way for us to connect with industry and keep you up to date on the work that we're doing to explore fresh ideas together. The goal is to ensure that there are more ways for you to connect with us and more efficient ways to share and communicate. This is all about supporting your sector and sharing information in a way that works for you. Through the webinars like today's, we'll make sure industry continues to have access to top-notch speakers and presenters who are relevant to you, relevant to the issues, challenges, and opportunities that you face. We know there are lots of ways to connect, and although virtual is great, we want to see you in person too. And this is why we're also increasing our support for and participation at events hosted by industry across Nova Scotia. And we've already started looking for opportunities to be present and supportive of existing, well-established events. Good examples of this are the recent Sea Farmers Conference in Halifax and the annual Seafood Alliance AGM, which took place in September. Our team is also supporting new events like the inaugural Seafood Innovation Summit that took place in St. John's, Newfoundland in November. At all of these events, we had a great representation from our dedicated members of our team, and I was lucky enough to meet a number of you at these events. I'm looking forward to the next opportunity to connect face-to-face. With that in mind, if any of you have events coming up that you know about, feel free to share them with us so we can try to add them to our calendars. Now, I know there is a schedule, so I will carry on. And I will say that anyone who heard my remarks at the Sea Farmers Conference may remember that my brain works in a very linear way. I like lists and I like order. So today I'll be concise and I have 3 topics to discuss. The first one is an important update on the Federal Regional Funding Partnership, the AFF, the Atlantic Fisheries Fund. Number 2, I'm going to talk a little bit about the buyer processor licensing, where we're at with that. We're in the midst of lifting the moratorium, and I'll talk a little bit about that process. And lastly, I want to share a little about the enforcement of suspected illegal activity in our fishing industries. So let's begin by chatting about the AFF. AFF is a $400 million provincial and federal fund that helps the seafood sector innovate and grow. Those with an idea or who want to apply for funding for a project were able to do so through the department, and we've had a number of success stories throughout the program. In fact, the fund has advanced projects related to value-added processing, traceability, and product quality. Investments have also supported improved productivity and new technologies and equipment. Recently, Minister Lebouthillier announced some changes to the uses of AFF money specific to redfish. We're still working through the details of her proposal and how it will impact Nova Scotian companies, but I want everyone to know that we will do everything we can to make sure that all the funding still available to Nova Scotians under the current agreement is spent in our province. And while we're sorting out the remaining funding, we're also looking to the future of this program. And I've committed to working with Minister Lebouthillier and my Atlantic colleagues on AFF renewal. And I will continue to encourage my federal and Atlantic counterparts to maintain their investments in this vital sector after the current program ends. We're looking forward to the next steps and working with the federal government to continue building on the successes that our sector has realized through this fund. Number 2, fish buyer and processor licensing policy. The team and I are focused on a strong and prosperous future for our seafood industry, and at the foundation of that success is a fair and modern licensing policy. To that end, I'm pleased to share that the review of our fish buyer processor licensing policy is almost complete. Our plan is to implement new regulations and policies soon that will support growth and innovation in the sector. My sincere thanks to everyone who's been providing our team with feedback during the review. I know there have been some tough conversations through this process, and I appreciate the information that was shared and the questions that have been asked. Ultimately, all the work that's gone into this will help us achieve a new licensing policy that supports industry, that inspires investor confidence in the sector, and generates economic returns in our communities. I'm very excited with the progress, and we will have more details to share as soon as we can. Finally, number 3 that we're going to talk about today is enforcement. We have heard the concerns about the need for more enforcement loud and clear. From all the enforcement issues I've heard, I've shared each of them with the federal minister. 2 weeks into my job in early October, we had a face-to-face meeting where enforcement was tops on the agenda. I followed up with her with several letters asking for increased enforcement efforts. Deputy Hollett has also advocated for more through letters to the federal deputy as well as the Public Prosecution Service. This is an ongoing issue that we will be persistent in finding a solution to. Although enforcement falls primarily under the responsibility of the federal government, our team does have a role to play. Fines are one way that we can help deter criminal activity, and we are working to raise them from $100,000 to $1 million for convictions. We've also had conversations with our compliance team at Natural Resources and Renewables and have asked them to work with our DFA team to increase enforcement efforts wherever possible. We will keep industry informed as we work through this and other important areas where progress is being made. Those are 3 things I wanted to talk to you about, and I know that everyone in our industry works hard to support their families and communities, and we know that this industry employs thousands and thousands of people in our province. I'm certain that we share the same goal, to keep it moving forward, to keep building a strong future. I know our department team members, whom I'm about to hand it over to, are going to share more information about that future and how we can get there. Lots of great work is being done in our fisheries and aquaculture industries, and I encourage you to stay tuned into these webinars to hear more about our sectors and what we're doing. I hope you enjoyed the session and the opportunity to ask questions and share your thoughts at the end of the presentation. It's been great to share the information with you today that I've shared, and I hope we can connect in person soon. And before I hand things over to Sean, I would like to send a huge thank you to everyone involved in organizing my first Minister's webinar and all those that are presenting this afternoon. I would also like to thank Perennia for taking care of the technology today and Karen for keeping us all on track. Without any further ado, I would now love to turn things over to our next presenter, Mr. Sean McDonald.
And before we hand it over to Sean, I'd just like to give him a little bit of an intro before he gets started so people can get to know a bit about Sean and the work that he's doing. So Sean began his role as director in the Marine Division of Fisheries in October 2022, before he was manager of Coastal Advisory Services. He's received a Bachelor of Community Design degree and later a Master of Marine Management from Dow. Sean began his career in private industry in the field of geographic information systems and mapping, but soon moved over to the public service, supporting the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Department of National Defense, Defense Construction Canada, and then provincial departments of Environment, Municipal Affairs, and Housing, before finally landing here at the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture, where we're very excited to have him. Sean has more hobbies than he has time for. He enjoys cooking, golfing, fly fishing, camping, canoeing, and spending time with his boys, Cooper and Reese, and wife, Kathy. And you can find him on the sports field or the hockey rink when not working. So Sean, excited to hear the work that you're doing. I know you've been very busy, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you everybody for having me. I'm really happy to speak about this next topic. I'm actually going to shift my presentation over onto the main screen and put it into presentation mode. Okay, just giving an opportunity for our moderator to give me a guarantee that I've got a presentation.
Looks great.
Excellent.
Looks perfect.
Okay. Well, thank you again. As the minister had pointed out and Karen has introduced. My name is Sean McDonald. I'm going to be speaking to all of you today on some of the work that our department is doing in the area of climate change and energy efficiency. So I'll jump right into it. So overall, we continue, as Nova Scotians, we continue to see change. Climate change, as we all know, is a very real building threat that we're seeing here in Nova Scotia. We continue to see sea level rise, changes in tide activity. We continue to see certain times of the year, both globally and even regionally, more locally, changes in water and air temperature, and even globally and regionally, changes in acidity. Now, all of these factors do have their impact on our seafood and sport fishing sectors. We also continue to monitor and observe changes in how frequent and how intense storm events and weather events are here throughout the province. We don't have to go as far back as Hurricane Fiona to understand that as the seafood and sport fishing sectors are marine in nature, there is a lot of coastal exposure and a lot of coastal risk just to interface day to day as we do. So for today, I'm going to speak to what we're doing as a department with our wider climate change and energy efficiency strategy. The strategy that we have is made up of 3 primary streams. Learn and share. What that means is the work of my team and all of the teams that are really interfacing with our clients on a day-to-day basis throughout the department. We really do emphasize conversations about climate change, what they're seeing, what people are seeing, observing, what they've been doing also to build on their adaptive capacity to get ready. We also have a whole activity stream around adapting, or so recognizing that change is happening, changes are going to continue to happen. What are we doing to prepare and adapt our infrastructure, adapt our operations, adapt our practices in a way that takes that into account? And also what I'm going to focus on mainly for today is around our mitigation stream, or our greenhouse gas, energy efficiency, greenhouse gas reduction stream. One of the things I do want to note, this government quite recently has come out with a wider provincial climate plan. So this government recognizes that climate change is so cross-cutting. There are so many elements at play for Nova Scotians on a day-to-day basis. But this department has also stepped up and put forward some very, very useful commitments under that climate plan. I'll go into these in very high-level detail, and we'll, for perhaps maybe other webinars, we'll be able to touch on these in a lot more detail and the progress that we've made as a department working with the sector. But the first, under our climate plan, the provincial climate plan, our department is committed to doing some additional vulnerability or risk assessments on certain areas of our seafood and sport fishing sectors. So the first one, we've been completing some vulnerability assessments on infrastructure, coastal infrastructure, critical coastal infrastructure, as well as our lobster fishery and our wider fisheries as a whole. But we will be spending more time in the coming months looking at the aquaculture industry as well as our sport fishing industry. This year we'll be turning around a climate change information hub, a portal, that allows for this learn and share to happen that much easier, for us to get some data and information out on projects that we've been doing around vulnerability, and to start to collect and communicate with our clients, those members that are on this call today, to be able to assess how preparations are being made, what vulnerabilities are being seen at a community level, and what resources are at everyone's disposal to be able to ready themselves or to leverage funding to be able to upgrade certain elements of their operations and whatnot. Finally, under the climate plan, our department is going to be initiating 2 new funds. One is our Fisheries and Aquaculture Energy Efficiency Innovation Fund, which will be available in the coming years, that allows clients access to funding to incentivize change that will lead to greater energy efficiencies in their operations, in their day-to-day. Finally, the Fisheries and Aquaculture Climate Change Adaptation Fund is also part of our strategy, which will provide funding to clients needing to access additional funding to upgrade infrastructure in parts of their operations. This will be available to them to enable them to get grant or loan funding. So very, very quickly, I'm going to focus in part of this talk on the work we've been doing with Efficiency One, Efficiency Nova Scotia, to identify opportunities that do exist in the sector around energy efficiency. Our whole goal in all of this work is to really help clients reduce their energy consumption, reduce GHG emissions or greenhouse gas emissions, which this government has a target to reduce by 2030 back to 53% of previous levels that have us really demonstrating a very active attempt to bring back or dial back the greenhouse gas emissions that we are seeing in the industry. So this sector, these industries will play a role, and we're going to be there as a department to help shepherd that change along. With reduction in energy consumption, we hope, and we are already seeing, cost reductions to operators. So in addition to reducing greenhouse gases and being good global citizens by trying to reduce the impact of those gases on exacerbating the climate issue, will play a role in reducing those. But as a fringe benefit, of course, as well, the costs associated with fuels and heating and electricity, we hope to realize reductions there as well. Very quickly, before I go to my final slide, I just want to recognize the work of Efficiency One, particularly our on-site energy manager, Glenn McDougall, who many of you would have had an opportunity to be introduced to. Glenn has worked with us since 2020 as a department in our first phase of work, which focused on seafood processing, looking at working with operators in the processing industry, as well as our 3 provincially owned hatcheries, to see what could be done to implement new technologies, new approaches that would reduce our energy consumption. And later in 2022, this is the phase we're on currently, we broadened that work of Efficiency Nova Scotia, Efficiency One, to look at our aquaculture industry, look at what opportunities may exist, whether it be new technologies, automation, on-site grid relief technologies for energy consumption, all kinds of things that we're looking at, as well as the potential for vessel electrification. So we began this work in 2022. Glenn is spearheading that. We're expanding the work a little bit further in a few other areas. There'll be more on that in the coming months. But with an effort to really dig into the seafood sector to identify all the different ways that we can look to reduce our energy consumption, and also utilize propulsion and fuel sources that are also that much more sustainable. This is my final slide. I'll be wrapping here in just a moment, but I did want to give a bit of an indication as to some of the progress that we've been making as a department. This is a dashboard that we had Efficiency One, Efficiency Nova Scotia create for us as a department. I believe the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture are the only provincial department to have such a dashboard at this point in time. I think other departments are attempting to catch up. But this does give us a real-time look at the progress that we're making. As you can see along the top, we have savings in energy or kilowatt hours, and we're over 8 million kilowatt hours saved since we began this work in 2020. We're also tracking incentives being paid. So as a client works with Efficiency One, Efficiency Nova Scotia to identify what changes they can make, they actually reap the benefits of certain incentives that we're making available to the seafood sector in order to, if they reach certain targets or implement certain technologies, they can utilize this incentive funding for support in their operations. Additionally, we're also tracking other funding that we've been able to tap into, as others have mentioned in the beginning of the call, AFF, and there are programs like this that do exist that we can leverage and tap into both federal and provincial funding. What's key about this is our on-site energy manager has been very good to identify for our clients where some of these funding streams do exist and what funding can be tapped into. So at this point in time, we've reduced, as a province in the sector, greenhouse gases by 5,232 metric tons. That is the equivalent of taking roughly 10,500 cars off of the road in that time. So when we look at that type of milestone being reached and continues to grow, as well as the cost savings that we're bringing to the sector, on that final to the right value of roughly about $736,000 in terms of cost savings by reducing energy consumption to industry, it does make us very, very happy and shows us that there's a bright future, given the fact that there's still a lot to be done. We're still at the beginning, we feel, but we do feel a lot of the work that we're doing in helping to incentivize change, make available our on-site energy manager, and work with the various industries to identify, okay, well, where is energy being used? What are the techniques or practices that we can employ to ensure we're reducing energy consumption, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, and also helping to save some costs. So I'll stop there, and I'll put it back to our moderators.
Thanks so much, Sean. Appreciate that. Dashboard looks good. So Brennan, maybe if you want to start to bring up your slides now. Brennan will be our next presenter. And I just want people to know that the webinar will be posted on the YouTube channel, and the link for it will be sent to all of the participants. So you will receive a link to a recording of the session. Okay, and as mentioned, you can post your questions in the Q&A. If you know who your questions, some of them will be obvious with the subject, but if you could just put who your question is to, that would be most appreciated. Okay, our next presenter, Brennan Gorham. He's the Director of Crown Lending for the Nova Scotia Fisheries and Aquaculture Loan Board, Farm Loan Board, and Timber Loan Board, all three. So he's a busy guy. And Brennan grew up in the fishing industry, working at his family's seafood processing and lobster holding company in Shag Harbor. Brennan holds a Bachelor of Science and a Bachelor of Education from Acadia University, as well as a Master's in Public Admin from the University of Victoria. Brennan first joined the Provincial Civil Service in June 2013 as Manager of Licensing and Leasing with the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture, a position he held until February 2019 before moving on to the role of Director of the Atlantic Fisheries Fund. Brennan has also worked as a Senior Strategic Policy Advisor in the Office of Priorities and Planning for the provincial government before taking on his current role now as Director of Crown Lending. Interesting fact, Brennan was a teacher for 2 years prior to changing careers to work for the provincial government. Welcome, Brennan.
All right, thanks. Hopefully my screen is visible here.
I see it. It looks great.
Very good. Well, thanks for having us today, and thanks for the invitation. I will jump right in the interest of time. Many folks are likely familiar with the Fisheries and Aquaculture Loan Board, but we've been proudly supporting Nova Scotia's seafood industry for over 80 years. But the way in which we provide that support and the things that we can support have changed in recent years. So we welcome the opportunity to present and provide information to a cross-section of the seafood industry. So we are able to provide affordable and reliable access to capital, so financing, to support growth, expansion, innovation, and also sustainability within our seafood sector. So it was great to hear the things that Sean was speaking of, And I would envision opportunities for us to partner with the department's climate plan through financing where required. And we are able to support the province's fishery, so the commercial fishery, aquaculture, seafood processing, and boat building sectors by providing lending opportunities. So many of you may have been familiar with the board's historic role in financing the commercial fishery, and also in the aquaculture space. However, recent years, we have been able to expand our financing offerings into the shore-based sector for buying, processing, and boat building, and we look forward to continuing to create relationships in that sector. So again, a bit on the background, we do operate as a Crown Corporation under provincial legislation. However, we cooperate and work closely with the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture. However, we do operate somewhat independent of the department, and we can provide loans, as I mentioned, for really any purpose that directly supports fishing and aquaculture industries in Nova Scotia. And although we do operate within regulations under the provincial legislation, our regulations were changed in recent years to expand our loan offerings, allow us to have more flexible loan terms and interest rates, and also to provide us with better approval processes as well. So if you dealt with the loan board historically, I just wouldn't want folks to assume that the way that we can provide loans now is the same as what you may have been used to in previous years. Again, want to show our current board of directors. Won't speak to each of their individual biographies. However, we have a cross section of Nova Scotians from across the province with various backgrounds in the fishery, financial advisory services, business development and lending, fisheries management, environmental services, aquaculture, and marine engineering. So a very wide range of directors who oversee our lending portfolio. And I think it's important to note that all loan decisions of the Fisheries and Aquaculture Loan Board are made in Nova Scotia by Nova Scotians for Nova Scotians. So we really are a provincial and really locally based financing agency, and our loan decisions are made understanding the importance of our financing in communities, coastal communities. Particularly 90% of our financing occurs outside of HRM. So we are very cognizant of the impact of our financing and make decisions for the betterment of the industry. Here are a number of our team members. We feel it's important to really put a face to the name of the folks you're dealing with at the Fisheries and Aquaculture Loan Board. Jennifer is based in Yarmouth, Dave is based in Pictou, and the rest of the team is based in our Bible Hill office. However, our staff are more than happy to, meet up with you, arrange a time to meet and chat, understand your business, because we really want to get a full understanding of your operation, what it is you're trying to achieve, and find ways that hopefully our financing can enable you to be successful. Some highlights for last fiscal year. So 2022-23 was a record year for the Fisheries and Aquaculture Loan Board. Over $66 million in loans were advanced to Nova Scotia seafood businesses. We ended the year with over $300 million in our total loan portfolio, and we had over 750 businesses or clients who we supported. And we certainly understand that Nova Scotia is #1 in seafood, and seafood is #1 in Nova Scotia when it comes to exports. So we take great pride in our role in providing financing to parts of the sector to support those goals. The stats for this year aren't yet finalized. However, we are continuing to see strong lending, a good number of applications being reviewed by our staff, and it's encouraging to see people still seeking to invest in their businesses and support their local economies and communities. I'll speak a bit now about some of the different loan products that we offer. I'm not able to get into great detail today, but please feel free to reach out to us or one of our staff to discuss further. As most people would know, we can finance gear and equipment for the seafood sector, for the aquaculture industry, for fish processing as well. We can finance boat builders, so that would be acquiring boat building operations or expanding or adding on to existing operations. We can finance the construction of new fishing vessels, the acquisition of used vessels, modifications, new engines, enhancements to existing fishing vessels. We can finance a variety of things in the aquaculture sector that run from land-based hatchery grow out for shellfish and finfish. We can finance the introduction of seed or product onto aquaculture sites, aquaculture grow out equipment, or on-land storage, processing, packing, or even shore-based kind of staging or operating facilities for marine aquaculture. Over 40% of our portfolio is the financing of commercial fishing licenses. We're able to provide this financing on terms that perhaps other lenders don't provide, recognizing that we want to set people up for long-term success and ensure that there is transition and succession and newcomers coming into the sector. On that as well, previously the board may have been viewed as primarily financing just the purchase of assets or licenses, but we can equally finance people who are purchasing a company or shares in a company that is involved in the seafood sector. So if you're looking at succession planning, we can support those types of transactions in a variety of ways. And I just wouldn't want folks to be deterred from seeking our financing if you're looking at buying an existing company or the shares of a company. In the processing space, we're able to finance new facility construction, modifications, equipment, technologies, land for seafood processing facilities or live lobster holding or exporting facilities. And we also have a microloan product, which is targeted for things up to $50,000. This could be, in the event you need to replace some gear or equipment in relatively short order. And this is a bit of an expedited loan process and application process that we're able to put forward. Our interest rates were last set on February 1st. Our rates are competitive with other commercial lending institutes. If you want to learn more about our rates, please reach out to one of our staff members and we can discuss the different loan terms or rate options that are available. We offer open rates, closed rates, different term lengths, depending on your appetite or interest in rate risk. One thing we do offer, though, is if you lock into a full-term loan with us, we will still review your rate at the 5-year mark, and your rate will only go down and it won't go up. So we do offer some interest rate stability for those that may be of interest. So here's where we're located. Our head office is in Truro. However, we have offices in Kentville, Yarmouth, and Pictou. I'm more than happy to meet with folks in whatever way makes sense for you and your operation. And we do work closely with staff of the department, particularly the Coastal Resource Coordinator team that's located throughout the province. They're a great asset and resource to support people in accessing the loan board programs. So with that, I will pass it along. I am able to stay on until around 2 o'clock. However, if anyone has any questions or would like more information, I do have some staff who are on the call, and we will be sure to address any questions and follow up with people after today's session. Thank you again to the Minister and the Department for the opportunity to speak on the loan board, and look forward to hearing from you in ways that we may be able to support you in your business's growth. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Brennan. Really appreciate it. A lot of new things there since I was last updated about the board. So lots of great options. And Brennan's staff is very personable and very knowledgeable. I know most of them, and I know they're give them a call. They're very helpful. So next up, we have Christine Yang. And I appreciate everyone staying on time today. It's excellent. Hi, Christine. So I'm just like to introduce Christine, and you can bring your slides up while I'm introducing you. So Christine Yang is the Manager of Market Development for the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture. She specializes in international trade and relations, focusing on promoting Nova Scotia seafood internationally. Her career with the province of Nova Scotia includes role as an international relations officer at the Nova Scotia Department of Intergovernmental Affairs and as a senior policy analyst at the Department of Communities, Culture, Tourism, and Heritage. She holds a master's degree in public administration from Dal and a Bachelor of Business Administration from Mount St. Vincent and a Bachelor of Agriculture Science from Fujian Agriculture and Forestry University. Christine is passionate about community involvement and has strong values around diversity, equity, inclusion, and her efforts in these areas have been recognized, leading her to being named one of the most inspiring immigrants in the Maritimes in 2021 and receiving the Apply Board 2023 International Alumni of Impact Award. Congratulations, Christine, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. As you know, my name is Christine. I'm the Manager of Market Development at the DFA, and I'm happy to be here today to share with you the marketing effort from our department. Using one sentence to describe our marketing division's role, we promote Nova Scotia seafood internationally and domestically. So today, I want to cover our sector's current landscape and the background of Nova Scotia seafood brand, as many of you have seen that before, and also our marketing objective and priority, as well as some exciting upcoming initiatives. This presentation's goal is to provide insight into our strategic approach to marketing and how we plan to support and advance the Nova Scotia seafood sector's interests, both internationally and domestically. So, talking about the current landscape, the Nova Scotia seafood industry as the province's largest exporter and also Canada's top seafood exporter. We reached 2.6 billion in seafood export to over 60 countries in 2022. So thanks to all of you today online for your hard work and contribution to this industry. And the US, China, and the EU were our top export markets. So as we talk a lot about the Indo-Pacific strategy from the federal level, and you may be curious this number. So about 38% of our seafood export went into the Indo-Pacific region, really aligns on the diversification effort. And for Europe, it accounts about 14%, including United Kingdom and other countries. So we are very proud that Nova Scotia seafood industry's global and diverse reach, and our most exported species, including live and frozen lobster, snow crab, scallop, cold-water shrimp, halibut, and clam. So transition into our branding effort, we introduced the 45 North, 63 West Nova Scotia seafood brand to spotlight our seafood, Nova Scotia seafood's exceptional taste and quality on a global stage. It was launched in 2017. This brand underlies our commitment to showcase Nova Scotia seafood across key markets such as Asia, Europe, and the United States. Through a comprehensive marketing strategies, including promotions, trade missions, social media. Our goal is to elevate the global profile and the value of our seafood products. So the Nova Scotia seafood website and directory further connect our exporters with international buyers, while our active presence on social media platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. It really helps us to build awareness and engagement with our premium seafood offering. So For our department is very committed to supporting the development and long-term sustainability of Nova Scotia seafood industry. Through our marketing effort, our objective are to raise awareness and increase value of Nova Scotia premium seafood products, and also to increase trade and market access opportunity for Nova Scotia seafood companies, as well collaborate with industry stakeholders and government entity to diversify Nova Scotia seafood export markets, sales distribution channels, and also export seafood species and product forms, and focusing on strategic markets, like I mentioned earlier, the Indo-Pacific region and the EU. Another area is very important for us is about local. So grow local seafood consumption through departmental-led marketing initiative and other ongoing collaboration, for example, with Nova Scotia Loyal Program and the Department of Agriculture is also one of our priority. Next, I will talk more about our role and priority. I will say our marketing division's daily operations concentrated on 3 key areas. The Nova Scotia seafood brand, engaging international market and boosting the domestic seafood consumption. So we are elevating the Nova Scotia seafood brand profile worldwide to increase consumption awareness internationally. We focus on market development, trade show, trade promotions, and establish long-term strategic relationship. And locally, we partnered with Nova Scotia Loyal Program and also the Department of Agriculture to support the local seafood consumption. Next, I would like to provide you with some tangible example of how we bring this priority to life in our work. So for example, the Nova Scotia seafood brand, our efforts to managing the Nova Scotia seafood brand to connect exporters with global markets through our dedicated website, and which showcase detailed seafood profile and seafood company profile, such as well seafood nutritional information, recipe, and how-to video. We also have the Nova Scotia seafood directory. It is a very important part of the website because it links the international buyers with Nova Scotia seafood exporter to foster market growth. Additionally, our social media channel also play a very important role to connect us with international and local audience. So if you are on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, make sure you follow Nova Scotia Seafood. And if you have any story that you would like to share or you would like us to help promote, make sure to tag us on your social media page. Next, for international engagement, our market development and trade promotion really involve active participation in international trade mission and trade shows across Asia, Europe, and US, alongside some innovative marketing initiatives and education campaign to showcase our seafood. And also, we really leverage the strategic market in the Indo-Pacific region and EU, utilize the existing free trade agreements such as CETA, CPTPP, and as we talked about earlier, diversification, export diversification is very important. We are focusing on 3 pillars. One is diversifying market, sales channel, and also the species and product form. Last but not least, relationship building is the key for international engagement. So it's important part of our work to planning any inbound and outbound trade missions, and also establish a long-term strategic partnership with our business and government partner locally and internationally. Here I have some pictures for you, so it's very visual. You can picture how our effort looks like when we're doing international engagement. It's through trade show, it's through business reception, partnership with local, for example, KOLs, influencer, and cooking school competition, all different type of way to promote Nova Scotia seafood internationally around the world. Last, I would like to talk about our priority in terms of local sites. So one important part of our departmental mandate is to support and encourage local seafood consumption. So we work very closely with our industry and also department partners. I see Karen's face there. I just want to make sure I give other speakers enough time. So next, I would like to jump to the most important part. So we are launching an exciting initiative for Nova Scotia seafood industry to enhance both local and global reach. So we have the export directory for better buyer engagement. Some interesting number to share. Last year, we have 11,000 user visit the seafood directory over 32,842 times. So at this moment, we are update our seafood export directory. You can visit our website. If your company have any new information, we will make sure that it's up to date and connect you with potential buyers. And also we have upcoming digital marketing workshop for Nova Scotia Seafood Company in Dartmouth. And you can go to Eventbrite, sign up for this event. And we have a number of seafood missions that we work very closely with Invest in Nova Scotia, our partners, to promote our Nova Scotia seafood internationally. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. If you want to find out more information about Nova Scotia seafood, you can scan this QR code or email me at christine.young@novascotia.ca.
Great. Thank you, Christine. Lots happening there with your team.
Thank you.
So next, I would like to invite Emily Surratt. And Emily, you bring up your slides there. So Emily Surratt is a fisheries strategist with the Marine Division with the department. Emily grew up in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, and began her career as a lobster technician in Cape Breton. She has a food science background and has experience in food safety management for pelagics and marine plants. Emily joined the department in 2019 as a coastal resource coordinator in her hometown of Yarmouth, and then carried on gaining experience as a strategist with the Atlantic Fisheries Fund before becoming a marine strategist. She currently oversees various files, including marine education, which she's going to share some information with us today. Your slides are up. They look great, and I'll hand it over.
There, now you can hear me.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot for the intro, Karen. So as she mentioned, I'm going to be talking about marine education today. So I wanted to give a little bit of background of where we've been. We've made significant steps since this time, but a long time ago, as government sometimes works, the Marine and Coastal Division was given direction to develop educational programming for Nova Scotia schools that represented a really accurate and positive reflection of the Nova Scotia seafood sector. So this strategy contained 4 pillars. And we use these pillars to build education programming capacity and to advance our goals and objectives. So the 4 pillars include designing primary to grade 12 learning experiences for the Nova Scotia Public School program students. The second pillar would be to build community partners, so to increase capacity to advance our strategy objectives. So for example, we lean heavily on Nova Scotia sector, the Fisheries Sector Council. We partner with them and to be able to build capacity within our sector that's already existing. We also, one of our pillars is engaging industry and development and delivery of programs. So this is important at every step of this program. And then our 4th pillar would be to create a compelling brand for this programming. So some of you might be more familiar with agriculture in the classroom. And that's kind of something that we strive to get towards. So as we're starting out right now, we just have more of a generic brand for our product, but we're looking to create something a bit more compelling that would be a little bit more eye-catching down the road. So the strategy proposed a series of learning experiences for primary to grade 12, as I mentioned. And we designed these in collaboration with the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development. So you'll see kind of how we went down that road a little bit more in the next slides. So what we learned as we were going down that road with the Department of Education was that it's much easier to integrate what we want to portray in our education experiences with the existing curriculum. So we created guidebooks in line with the curriculum that currently exists for grades primary to 3 and then also for grades 4 to 6. So here, this box, I'll kind of highlight for you guys. So there's the existing social studies and science curriculum outcomes that are already put out by the Department of Education. And we really laid this out so that it's easy for teachers to pick and choose which outcomes they're going to deliver through the programming that we have created for them. So this is just an example out of our educator guidebook where it shows the primary, grade 1, 2, and 3 outcomes and how our programming would deliver those outcomes. So where we are right now, we currently have lobster-focused guidebooks that have been created. So there's a student guidebook and an educator guidebook for each grouping of grades. So we group them from primary to 3 and grades 4 to 6, and they are available in English and French, as you see there. So all 4 guides contain similar sections that guide users through the content. So the first section would be people, the ocean, and lobsters, and this is called interconnectedness for the older kids. So this section really ties Nova Scotia's historic background to the oceans and lobster fishing through the lens of Mi'kmaq people, Gaels, Black Nova Scotians, and Acadians. Our second section that's common throughout these guidebooks is called Taking Care of the Ocean, or Sustainable Practices for the older kids. And this section speaks to different management methods used for harvesting lobster and how marine ecosystems are unique. Our third section in the guidebooks is climate change. So this section introduces students to climate change in the younger courses and then builds upon those different objectives that they learned in the earlier grades. So we talk about climate change as well as ocean acidification through a variety of activities that are hands-on as well. Our fourth section is called Food and Jobs. This one says really important to me. We called it livelihoods for grades 4 to 6, but this section really underlines how important the fishery is to Nova Scotia's economy, and it identifies career opportunities that are specific to the marine industry in this case. I did just want to give a couple examples of the content that you could find in these guidebooks. So as I mentioned, I just wanted to clarify, I guess, it's a student-facing workbook and then an educator workbook, where the educator workbook has kind of the answers to all these questions. But this is an example of the student-facing workbook. So this one's a really hands-on experience where you are asking the students to actually become their own captain. They get to name their boat, find a picture of a fishing boat that they like the look of. They're able to pick their their lobster fishing area, or their LFA, so they can pick that closest to their community, or they can go around the province. And then there are different links here below where they can identify the closest Mi'kmaq, Acadian, Gaelic, and African Nova Scotian communities near that LFA. And then based on some guidance from DFO, they're able to identify how many traps they can have, and what the maximum number of traps is allowed in their LFA, and if that differs around the province. And then as well as seasons, they're able to look up when they can fish, and then they're able to calculate what their profit would be. So they're given some averages of around what their trap can hold, how much a lobster weighs, and then they're encouraged to research what the local price would be. So that's a really important activity, I think, to have students go through and to be able to kind of instill that bit of entrepreneurship that comes with owning your own vessel and being an owner-operator. I think there's a lot of important things that have really significant importance when we talk about loan board and new entrants and the hurdles around there. And I think one of them is just, knowing that you want to do this for a while. And then another activity that we have, so this is out of the 4 to 6 guidebook. And this is a Google slideshow that's also attached. So it's embedded in there. Students can click on and it goes through a slideshow that showcases many different jobs that are available through like the marine sector. So including fishing, aquaculture, seafood processing, as well as research, equipment, sales, tourism. So it's quite broad. And then students are encouraged to select a career. And then there are several videos kind of embedded in this slideshow too that illustrate the career that has been chosen. And then they're asked to work backwards and see what kind of skills and education they would need. And then they're encouraged to write a job ad. So this really digs into kind of what would be required for the job and things that are describing that job. And this is my second last slide. So currently all of our guidebooks are available on CMAR's website. So CMAR, Center for Marine Applied Research, partnered with us, thankfully, to be able to produce this content. So we have them all there, all the French and English guidebooks. If everyone could reach out to that page and check them out and share them with your teacher friends, that would be fantastic. And then I just did want to give a little bit of an update on how we're doing with communicating this project to teachers right now. So we did do a soft launch. It was actually in a bit of a moment of change for our department where we were switching between our current minister and our previous. So we decided to do a soft launch at the Association of Science Teachers Conference at Halifax West High School at the end of October. And the feedback was fantastic. The teachers really appreciated having the printed copies that were provided. They were really engaged in searching it up and having the electronic copy. And then the French versions were also really well received. It did seem like there was a bit more uptake from rural teachers versus urban, but maybe this was just the representation of the teachers that were there. And there was a really large amount of interest from Oceans 11 teachers. It seems like they could definitely use a little bit of content for their classes. So that's it was great feedback. It was a really great event. And that's my presentation. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. Some exciting work happening there under the Marine Group. So we've had 4 presentations today, all very informative, and thank you to our presenters for staying on time. I appreciate that. And if you haven't seen the Q&A box, it's along the bottom of your screen, and I invite you to share any questions that you may have at this time. You can just type it in and we'll have send it along to the appropriate person to answer. Brennan had to step away for a timber loan board meeting, I believe. So if you have a question for him, we'll make sure it gets to him and follow up with it and send it out. Great. So I'm just going to so I just want to go back to Sean. We had a question for you, Sean, after your presentation. And the question from Nicholas is, does this tie into insurance policies and guaranteeing portion of individual farmers' policies are covered, similar to agriculture insurance policies?
Okay, so this is a very, very good question. Anytime you do bring up the topic of climate change, often enough, insurance and impact on insurability is a natural progression in that discussion. So we've been doing a lot of our work in the early stages, working with the sector to first try and understand where we're vulnerable. So the early work that we would have done with the Center for Marine Applied Research, or CMAR, and some of our early work around climate change for the department was really focusing on essentially, how can climate change impact, like how climate change more generally, does it impact the various sectors and various industries? When you look at in the insurance industry, obviously they're very, very interested in climate change. In previous positions I've had within the Nova Scotia government, had very in-depth conversations with the insurance industry and really generally know where they are. They want to know, the insurance industry does definitely want to know that clients, departments, governments are looking to first identify areas of risk, as would an insurance industry themselves. So that's a lot of the framing, a lot of where we're going initially with industry, particularly as it relates to adaptation and risk of climate change. So a lot of the vulnerability assessment work that I would have referred to, whether it relates to kind of that 30,000 foot, all of the province view, or right down into specific industries where we actually have dug right into the lobster industry and are looking at the aquaculture industry coming up in the coming months. When we speak to insurability, I think what different carriers in the industry as a whole is looking for clients to do is to demonstrate that they have an awareness of what the risks or vulnerabilities potentially are, which is why we're doing this work first. But once you do that, you certainly have to take the next steps, which is looking to, okay, well, if this is a risk and this is a risk, what are we going to do to adapt or to diversify? Or there's different strategies that can be employed. So to have that conversation around insurance, I think it's really, we're taking the right steps as a department with the sector to first help to identify, well, what and where are those risks that allow us to action plan around either seeking certain funding pots for making corrections or adaptive measures, or even looking forward to start to understand, well, how might we as a department might want to also reflect in our regulations where it makes sense to have certain pieces of infrastructure put in place, or where it makes most sense to even do siting around where either a seafood processing or seafood holding operation would be. So short answer is insurance industry has not really came to us directly to make sure that we're going down a pathway that leads to insurability. But in working with the insurance industry in the past, we definitely see the merit in first starting to work with the sectors to understand where they are vulnerable first, and then start to back build and look to ensure we have the right pieces in place with other government colleagues and departments as well. As you well know, our department is one of the pieces at play. When it comes to even regulating, managing even a harbor, there's everything from local government permitting to provincial government permitting around environment, and then of course even if it relates to navigation and infrastructure, there are federal partners that are at play. So all of us are really trying to see how this is going to work and how we can work better together. Conversations are always being had with representatives of different industries, and the insurance industry is one that really hasn't kind of been missed. We want to make sure that the steps being taken to first assess the risk and then deal with the risk is there and known, and we're not ignoring that and jumping right on that, which again is really what we know the insurance industry to be very heavily favoring for a lot of other sectors, is just try and distill what these risks and what these parts of the change that we're seeing, whether it be to sea level rise or be to storm surge or overland flooding, like what is that actually going to mean, and how could we get to a point, what is a resilient seafood sector? I mean, these are why we're doing the learn and share component to a lot of our work, which is to have these conversations. Does it make sense to actually draw back from a certain part of the coast? Does it make sense to the ground floor of a particular operation, you construct it and design it in such a way that it actually will take flooding, and when the floodwaters recede, the damage is just not as great. So there's different ways that we can deal with this. But yeah, I mean, our programs that we're putting out are not directly interfacing with the insurance industry, but we are certainly there and having conversations and being mindful of what is expected and what would be of interest when it comes to insurability and dealing with climate risks, and what are the insurance implications of that.
Great. Thank you, Sean. This next question is for Emily. So Jennifer wanted to ask, around the education materials, is there a plan to make school educational materials involving the aquaculture industry?
Sure, I can speak to that. So the division that I'm in is the Marine and Coastal Division. And then we do have an aquaculture division that's separate from us, and they do have their own education strategy. We have had some really brief conversations around maybe joining forces, but it looks like at this time that's going to remain separate. So it would be up to that department, like that division, to specify their own requirements around that and how their strategy would play out. So at this time, the file that I'm working on would only be related to marine fisheries.
Great. Thanks, Emily. Christine, I have a question for you, but I'm not sure if it lands with you or more with our aquaculture department. But from Charlene, she says, thanks for the info on marketing of seafood. My question has to do with marine plants. There is interest in marine plant leases around the province. Will NSDFA someday include marketing research of marine plants such as sugar kelp? Would you be able to answer that, Christine, or is that more with our aquaculture department or aquaculture group?
I'm wondering if Charlene can send an email, maybe we can connect, and then the more information I can type my email in the answer part.
Excellent. Sounds good. So we'll follow up with you, Charlene, on that. Great. So any questions for the loan board, we will follow up on. And there was another question here, and maybe I'll let the minister circle around about it, but it was about, will there be an in-person conference this year, ministers' conference? And Minister, did you want to speak to that? The person apologized if they had missed, they may have joined late, so I know you spoke to that in the beginning, but just to follow up on that.
Yeah, just to quickly say that the decision was made that for at least for 2024, we're going to promote trying to be more involved in industry events and hosting webinars such as this. So the standalone ministers conference, at least for this year, is on pause, and we'll look at it again in the future, perhaps unless there's overwhelming success for this webinar and the industry events are welcoming us with open arms. We'll see what the future holds.
Great. Thank you, Minister. And I have another question for Sean, coming back from Stuart. So Stuart's question is in respect to climate change and vulnerability assessments. You mentioned assessments would soon be undertaken in aquaculture. Has any work been done already with respect to open net pen fish farming? It would appear that the impacts of climate change are very inconsistent with the business model to open net pen. So we have warming waters in the summer, cooling in the winter. Fish in net pens have never been more vulnerable. Would you agree that it is now impossible to reconcile our climate impacts with the vulnerability of open net pen?
So I can't speak specifically to open net pens here in Nova Scotia. It's certainly not lost on us. Certain parts or types of operations are more vulnerable than others. Hence why we're really going to do a systematic look at that industry. We're really going to break the industry down into its primary components of finfish type operations versus shellfish type operations, and start to really see, with the different types of risks presented through climate change, whether it be, increased frequency and intensity of storms and what that will do to an operation, but also much wider, and looking at what we are already starting to see as some of the condition changes, whether it be water, temperature, salinity, acidity, and very important factors for producing growing fish. So, when we talk about vulnerability assessments, it's very, very easy to start to look at an operation and say, okay, well, this is the layout, this is the type of operation, these are the particular areas that would be vulnerable to, higher than normal wave activity, or this part of the operation is given, water levels could potentially be here, maximum level of say a breakwater or a wharf is here, given precipitation and climate models, this particular area or operation is not, not ready for this kind of storm activity. Knowing that is hugely beneficial as we start to look at, okay, when and where should we be making investments? Where do we need to make some hard decisions as well? But when we talk about open pen, I think very much within the scope of the different types of operations. Usually part of these assessments as well, we don't necessarily only focus on Nova Scotia. We definitely take a page out of other jurisdictions to see what's being used and employed. Part of some of the learn and share work that we're doing with our climate change strategy is to try and work with other jurisdictions and other countries to see what's being employed there as well. So when it comes to the vulnerability assessments, we just don't necessarily end a lot of our work there as well. We do have to solution around this and look at other countries, other jurisdictions, what they're doing, what they're employing to try and, we're all in this together. So part of this work that we're doing as a department is not only just the vulnerability assessments as well, which we really, really look specifically operation to operation in different parts of the province at, what would be the conditions that would put those places at risk. We are utilizing a lot of expertise. The fact that we do have, and I'll give credit to Perennia's Center for Marine Applied Research for the work that they've been doing with us to date and continue to do as we look at critical infrastructure that is at risk along the coast, and also looking at the aquaculture industry specifically, all of the different types of technologies that are and practices that are being used. So that will be in view. Open pen for sure. We won't necessarily know where we stand until we complete that vulnerability assessment, but it's something that we definitely are going to have a lot of conversations with the operators themselves and with the association as we work through that vulnerability assessment, because we want it to be actionable. We want it to be set in such a way that it does really give us the roadmap as an industry and as a sector to set ourselves up for what needs to be done to put ourselves in the best possible place to be resilient to the impacts of climate change, and possibly to even set ourselves up to be able to export some of the solutions and technologies that we could potentially even grow homegrown here in Nova Scotia to address some of these problems. So everything is on the table, but we are looking forward to this vulnerability assessment, and we hope to get into that, Stuart, when we look at open pen use.
Yes. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate that. My next two questions are for the minister. And Minister, the question is, what do you see as the area of focus for the eastern shore of Nova Scotia regarding aquaculture activity?
Thanks, Karen. Future of aquaculture, not just on the eastern shore, but I think province-wide. I was just actually writing some notes for when I'm going to wrap up the session to say that there are so many exciting things happening in aquaculture in our province right now. We've gone through the last 10 years where there hasn't been too many advancements, but the team has been working diligently for the last 4 or 5 years on a couple of new initiatives. There's a license reissuance initiative that started just before Christmas, where 6 previously issued licenses are being reoffered for new proponents. We have a really exciting development down in Argyle, the aquaculture development area that is moving along nicely through the steps that it has to go through before it's launched to the public. So I'm really excited right now for what the future of aquaculture holds for our province. And I'll say that with the caveat that I'm talking mainly about shellfish and marine plant aquaculture. I think that we can all agree that finfish is its own thing, and that there'll be a process in place for that. But aquaculture, with the less contentious applications and the less talked about species that don't get the same attention that finfish does, I think that there's a strong future for that on the Eastern Shore and around the province where it's appropriate.
Great, thank you, Minister. And another quick question here. Will you be attending the Seafood Expo North America in Boston?
Absolutely. It is on my calendar and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Great. Are there any other questions today that you would like to share? And if we missed one, we'll make sure we follow up. And so any that were for Brennan, we'll follow up on. And I just have one more for you, Minister, here that just popped up. They're starting to roll in now. People
Keep
are
'em
starting to
coming.
warm up. Okay. So this one's from Melinda. So the information about the volume of illegal seafood leaving Nova Scotia, such as Alvers, is alarming. There is only one way in and out of Nova Scotia by highway. This seems to be an easy location for searching vehicles. Transporting illegal live animals across provincial borders should be a concern to the province Nova Scotia, to the Atlantic provinces. So she's saying DFO does not have the resources to take this task on alone. What additional resources are planned to reduce the amount of illegal seafood leaving this province? I'm not sure if more paperwork for licensed, law-abiding buyers and processors is going to stop the illegal activity.
No, thank you, Karen, and thank you, Melinda, for the question. Of course, I spoke a little bit about enforcement of illegal activity in my opening. And in the opening, I was more focused on illegal harvesting, I think, more than anything else. But you're right, there's been reports of a lot of illegal activity with respect to Elvers. And it is another topic that we've had a conversation with the federal minister about and asked for their support. And we've also added on to that by having a special meeting with our DNR, our colleagues who look after the compliance officers. They're also they have a lot of tasks on their plate as well. And we appreciate that, but we certainly asked for more support, both from the federal government and from our DNR, our colleagues, to increase the enforcement efforts for this really valuable species. We're going to continue that advocacy as much as we can. I know that one of the most important issues for the Elver Association was at least monitoring the East River in Chester. There's some historical data there with respect to the sustainability of the species, that without proper compliance efforts there and conservation efforts there, we can lose that data. And I believe last year they weren't even able to harness the data that they wanted to because of the overfishing and the illegal harvesting. So we know there's lots of work to do on the file, and it doesn't all lie with us. And so our work is to continue to advocate with DFO and continue to ask for assistance from our natural resources and renewables colleagues. Thank you for the question.
Great. And I just have one last one here. Are you concerned about the affordability of seafood in Nova Scotia? Maybe I'd put that to the minister or deputy minister.
Sure, thanks, Karen.
Yep.
I'll start, and
Great.
if Deputy Hollett wants to chime in, he certainly is welcome to do so. I mean, affordability is not just a seafood issue. Of course, it's something that as MLA I hear about a lot in my constituency office, and of course the Premier talks about affordability quite a bit, as does the Minister of Community Services. So Like, look, we're in a time where things are a little bit more expensive, and we're doing what we can to offer the supports that we can for Nova Scotians, and using in our provincial budget to help those who are in the greatest need. Thank you, Karen.
Thanks. Deputy, did you want to follow up on that?
I agree with what the minister said. I think it's a difficult time for Nova Scotians overall, not just with respect to seafood. Inflation has really driven prices up for everything that impacts the cost of living, from rent prices to mortgage prices to food costs across the board. And I think it's something that this government's taking very seriously and looking at measures that make meaningful impact in the lives of Nova Scotians. There are things like the heating assistance rebate that's out there that people can apply for. And I think it's important to keep in mind that people don't categorize these expenses. They feel them overall in their household budgets. And it's difficult to say, you can address one or the other without looking at them on the whole and how they impact people. So there's lots that's happening. I know there's lots to come in order to address these things. What is important for us, I think, and the role that we play here at Fisheries and Aquaculture, is that we are ensuring that there is high quality and safe seafood that comes here through the province and is available to Nova Scotians, along with other food sources.
We're going to fit in one more quick one, just one quick one, and then we'll close up because there's a few coming in. So this may be a couple of people chiming in. So from Angela, Nova Scotia has seen over 1 million pounds of marine debris, removed in less than 4 years. A lot of it is fishing industry related. In the new educational packages, will anything related to marine debris and is there anything related to marine debris or the prevention of it? Emily, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I'm nodding. Yeah, there is. There are a couple activities around, like it's for younger children, so you have to understand that it's kind of basic, but around pollution and how that affects not only your immediate circle, but the oceans and all the creatures that are living within the oceans. So it's definitely something that's talked about a lot. And there are like 2 of the 4 sections within the education booklets do kind of focus on sustainability, climate change, those types of things. So it is something that we focused heavily on within the education guidebooks that are available now.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. I think that is our time today. And Minister, I'll just let you close up with some closing words before we let everyone go today.
Thank you very much, Karen, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And of course, a big thanks to Sean, to Brennan, to Christine, and Emily for their presentations. I hope everyone found something positive to take away from the day. And as I alluded to in one of my answers, like the topics presented today are just a few of the things that our team is doing. There's so many areas that our DFA team is doing some really good work on behalf of Nova Scotians. And I'm really looking forward to future webinars where we can highlight the other aspects of what we're doing. So we heard a few questions on aquaculture, and there are so many important and exciting things taking place in the aquaculture sector these days. I'm looking forward to future webinars, and maybe I can convince people to throw some aquaculture stuff into the future ones. So thank you again. That wraps up everything for today, and I really appreciate everyone who took the time to tune in today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Minister. And please stay tuned. We'll be in touch with our next series as they come out. So stay tuned, and we'll make sure we'll keep everybody informed and follow up with the questions if we weren't able to get to them this afternoon, all of them. Okay, have a great day, everybody. Thank you for joining us.